Texas. This is an island surrounded by water, big water, ocean water. Trust me, I'm like a smart person. I'm very consistent. I'm a very stable genius. I had the best words, tolerated. I know words. Mike Pounds. I hope they now go and take a look at the oranges of the investigation. But there's no better word than stupid. Anonymous, really anonymous. I'm very highly educated. One of the wettest we've ever seen from the standpoint of water. Had the best words. God bless the United States.
Throughout the nation, Waldorf Nation. Hey everybody, welcome to the show. It's Monday. We got a brand new week, brand new bunch of BS to go over the weekend. But actually, some of it's good. I mean, we do have the electors that so far are doing their job. They're doing what they're supposed to do. They're not actually going to go after, they're not going to actually go and do what the Trump administration wants them to do, which, of course, is to try to give Donald Trump a second term. So that's good, but Donald Trump's not happy about it, not surprisingly. So we're going to talk about how unhappy he is, especially when it comes to the Supreme Court. Very, very not happy. We're going to talk about that. We also have, there's at least one or two Texas members of the legislature that are seriously thinking about having Texas break off from the United States. Yeah. Oh boy, fun times. Then we've got the administration coming after the disabled again. We've got these businesses, anti-gay businesses that have been getting federal bailouts. And we've got a paramedic being shamed by the New York Post. I'm going to go and shame the New York Post. Fun times. So if you haven't already, please like and share the stream. Helps out. If you do so, hey, you know, we need on this channel, like, we're hoping to grow massively by 2021. So I'm hoping that we can get to 200,000 subscribers before the end of next year. So we're not going to hit that this year. I would love to hit 150,000 by the end of the year. We're at 147,000 right now. We really want to hit 200,000 by the end of next year. So let's do it. Share. Subscribe, like, do all that stuff. I beg of you, I ask of you, my wonderful audience, to help get us out there and let us hit that amazing large goal for the channel, so we can grow. We can get out the progressive message and clown on Republicans at the same time. That's the whole purpose of the show. Get out the progressive message and clown Republicans and corporate Democrats too. All right, so with that, let's dive in. A lot of mileage out of this. It just keeps on going. Just keeps getting going. All right. Anyway. President Donald Trump is raging on social media after the Supreme Court refused to hear Texas' last-ditch effort to install him for another 4 years. So I absolutely love it. The raging. So let me read this tweet here. He said the fact that the Supreme Court wouldn't find standing in an original jurisdiction matter between multiple states and including the president of the states is absurd. It is enumerated in the Constitution. They just chickened out and didn't want to rule on the merits of the case. So bad for our country. Very, very bad. No, you know what this is? Hilariously dumb. I'm sorry, you even read the Constitution? This entire lawsuit argued that because of the way people voted in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, and Georgia, hurt Texas. Why? Because, well, Texas voted for Donald Trump, and those other states did not. More absurdly, to get into a little bit more detail, they argued that because the states were able to set their own rules on voting, which they were able to change because states are able to administer their own elections. And in this case, in some states allow for ballot harvesting. I know Georgia kind of cracked down a little bit on that a little bit, but it's still a legal thing in many of those states. Also, you had an expansion of mail-in ballots being postmarked and all that different stuff that basically expanded voting as a result of the pandemic. They're saying, well, all that stuff that increased voting, that ended up hurting Texas because we didn't get the result that we wanted to. And therefore, since it hurt us by not installing Donald Trump for another 4 years, we feel like that it's our right to sue the rest of the states for administering their own elections. Basically. It's pathetic. It is a Hail Mary move because, for one thing, states' rights. What is it that Texas always argues? States' rights. All these conservative states do the same thing. Like states' rights, states' rights. We have the states' rights. Normally, of course, they always invoke states' rights when it's to marginalize black people and keep them from voting and go after trans people. Basically. That's the only time that you see conservatives arguing for states' rights. It's when it's used to try to discriminate against other people. And ironically, this is sort of the same thing because now instead of discriminating just against the people, they are also saying we want to throw out millions of their votes. We want to disenfranchise millions of voters in other states because I don't like the election result. It's whiny. It's a bitch move. It's very cuck. It's a big cuck move. Okay, not good. And so the Supreme Court basically said in response to this, in not taking this case, they said, sorry, but Texas, even though we want Donald Trump, the conservatives in the court want a Republican president. They said, look, we can't say that Texas can control the way other states conduct their elections. And there's a certain sense to that when you look at it from a conservative perspective, because you don't want the state of California, for example, telling Texas or Alabama what to do, and then having the state of California sue because they think that they have standing. And that's unfortunately the precedent that this would set. And so is Alan West thinking about that? Is Ken Paxton thinking about that? No, Ken Paxton is like groveling for a pardon. It's so sad and fucking pathetic. Where he's like, oh, please, Donald Trump, please. Oh, I really want a pardon. I'm in trouble. Help me, I'm in trouble. I'll make you president for another 4 years. I'm going to try. Look at me. I'm such a good little bitch. That's essentially what it is. Okay. And so there's that. But really what the core of the issue is that they're trying to bring up is, well, I can't believe a state or several states would try to make voting easier during a pandemic. Now, the answer is we should absolutely make voting easier, not just during a pandemic, but all the time. Could you imagine actually being able to have a fundamental right to that should be available to all Americans, available in a way that is easy for everyone to be able to get, to access if they want it? That would be nice, wouldn't it? But anyway, that's it. And understand, like, the Republican Party, they hate when people vote. They don't believe everyone should vote. In fact, good example here is Newt Gingrich, who basically just like admitted that, yeah, we hate it when people vote. Quote, why is Georgia Secretary of State Raffensperger working so hard to add drop boxes and take other steps to make it harder for Republicans to win? Is he really that intimidated by Stacey Abrams? That right there is an admission by Newt Gingrich that more people voting, more people having access to votes makes it harder for Republicans to win. You know why? It's because they're against democracy. They really are. Donald Trump is against democracy. He has spent the last month trying to overturn the election results where he lost fair and square. No voter fraud. You know how I know that there's no voter fraud? Because every single official, from Donald Trump's lawyers to William Barr, to people who basically have a vested interest in keeping Donald Trump in office, could not produce the evidence required for these Republican judges who would love to see another Donald Trump presidency. Understand that this isn't about the fact that they don't want someone like Donald Trump or another Republican in office. They do. They're Republicans. Of course, they're like, fuck. It's between me doing my job and keeping a Republican in office. Well, look, if the Democrats mess up, we can always get another Republican in office. But if I install an authoritarian into the presidency, I could be removed from my position somehow, because this would not go over well in reinstalling Donald Trump in the White House when it's clear that he did not win. There would be some sort of political ramification somehow. Something I think would happen. There would be a backlash, I think, unlike we've ever seen. Okay. So obviously, like, well, look, I can't do that. So I guess I will do my job. I will do my job in the way that I'm supposed to do my job. And that's it. I don't have any evidence to show that there was any sort of fraud. You can't produce it. So I'm just going to have to follow my oath of office. And so that's a good thing. I guess at least I'm happy to see that even though some Republican judges are upset about this, are upset that they couldn't provide this evidence, well, they at least still managed to do their job and protect democracy. The least we could hope for, but hey, I'll take it. Okay. Republicans are clearly anti-democratic. Democrats are covertly anti-democratic. This Scott. They really, I think that applies mainly for like their primary process. The Democratic primary process is not good. There's a lot of issues. There was a recent Iowa report actually that showed that there was a lot of bad stuff that happened in the Democratic primaries. One of these days, soon, maybe tomorrow, I will go and talk about that as well, because I think that's really important to talk about. All right. Anyway, moving on. Let's get to the second here, second story, and it's related. All right. The head of the Texas Republican Party is flipping out after the Supreme Court declined to hear Attorney General Ken Paxton's ridiculous lawsuit to overturn the election results. So now this is Texas Republican Chairman Allen West. Y'all know Allen West, who issued a statement recently saying that perhaps it is time for, quote, law-abiding states to band together and form a union of states that will abide by the Constitution, which would ironically be both against the law and against the Constitution. Well done. Nailed it. And it's, of course, because it would be treason. I don't know if they realize that seceding from the entire United States would make you no longer an American patriot. I'm just saying, like, leaving the country that you say you love doesn't really show the love for that country. I It doesn't make any sense. But anyway, he continues. The Supreme Court has decreed that a state can take what he calls unconstitutional actions to violate its own election law. Really? Is there any proof of that? They violated their own election. They keep saying these things, but they can't provide any sort of evidence to back them up. But he says this. He says, the decision establishes a precedent that says states can violate the U.S. Constitution and not be held accountable. Accountable by who? What? By Texas? I'm sorry, is Texas the arbiter of what Michigan does? I don't think so. I'm not having some Texan boss me around. No. You control the stuff in Texas when it comes to voting. We control our own elections up here. And we actually do it in a way that lets more people vote. A sad day for you. But he says this decision will have far-reaching ramifications for the future of our constitutional republic. And then went on to say that the Texas GOP will always stand for the Constitution and the rule of law when others don't. We stand for the rule of law, which is why we are going to break the law and leave this country. Ugh. Again, doesn't make sense. Are you serious? So now here's the thing. So he tried this entire argument from Ken Paxton, was the Attorney General of Texas who filed this lawsuit against these other 4 states, these other battleground states, is that somehow these states violated the 14th Amendment, the Equal Protection Clause, by changing, in the face of a pandemic, some of their election rules. Which, again, states administer their own elections, so they're allowed to do that. They're allowed to change the rules based on, the situation. And so, for example, some states said, okay, we're going to allow for more mail-in ballots. We're going to allow for some ballot harvesting to go on in order to make it easier for people to vote. We're going to put up these drop-off boxes so that people don't have to gather at the polling stations and possibly spread coronavirus. We're going to make voting a little bit easier, a little bit better for people, especially those who are at risk. No, that makes all the sense in the world. But Texas looks at it and says, oh, no, you don't. You just made voting easier. And I'm speaking more of Texas Republicans, okay? Texas Republicans and Republicans all over said, how dare you make voting easier? We want voting to be harder. We have been trying for decades to make it harder for people to vote, because when more people vote, we tend to lose. And so, okay, well, now they're super, super upset that we've actually, in some states, at least temporarily, made it easier to vote. And so that's why the lawsuit. It makes sense. Okay. And so the thing is, if the Supreme Court had taken up this case, it would actually be a complete mess. It could lead to states suing each other, the precedent that it would set, over ridiculous things. Okay. So think about this, right? If California thinks that Texas, for example, or Alabama, has an advantage over them now, okay, and thinks, well, there's a precedent now in the court that says that if there's an advantage that another state has, we can take them to court because we feel that they have violated the 14th Amendment, the Equal Protection Clause. And so now we're going to sue the shit out of Alabama for, I don't know, wages or regulation, whatever they want, essentially. It's almost carte blanche, and that would create just a massive run, states suing each other over ridiculous things, and it would be never ending. The court says, we don't want that. We are not interested in having this happen because it would be an absolute fucking mess. And so we're just not going to take this up, especially for Donald Trump. That's it. And so there you go. That the problem here is that you had 18 states, over 100 plus Republican officials in Congress, congressional Republicans, that backed this lawsuit. Not because they actually believe in it, but I think it's because they mostly didn't want to get called out by Donald Trump, because he understand this guy runs the Republican Party now. It is the party of Donald Trump. And understandably so, because you've got 90% of Republicans, over 90%, that have a favorable view of Donald Trump. They love the guy. And so what he says on Twitter matters a lot. And so, unfortunately, if you're a Republican politician, you're kind of stuck between a rock and the hard place. Not that I feel bad for them at all, because they're Republicans, but they're kind of stuck like, okay, I really don't want Donald Trump to, destroy the norms of the Republic, but I also don't want to get trashed on Twitter and then never win an election again. And so that's the situation that they're in, and it's, again, why I don't really feel bad for them at all. And so what's even more disturbing now is not only how, like I said, Texas wants to take their ball and go home, or make themselves their own little country, because it can't dictate what some of the other states can do, but also how much the secession talk is actually going through the Republican Party. In fact, there was a last week, Rush Limbaugh was talking about how much the red states and blue states really don't get along, and how secession might be inevitable. In fact, I want to play that video for you. Take a listen.
I thought you were asking me something else when you said, "Well, can we win?" I meant, I thought you meant, can we win the culture? Can we dominate the culture? I actually think, and I've referenced this, I've alluded to this a couple of times, because I've seen others allude to this. I actually think that we're trending toward secession. I see more and more people asking, what in the world do we have in common with the people who live in, say, New York? What is there that makes us believe that there is enough of us there to even have a chance at winning New York, especially if you're talking about votes? I see a lot of bloggers, I can't think of names right now, a lot of bloggers have written extensively about how distant and separated, and how much more separated our culture is becoming politically, and that it can't go on this way. There cannot be a peaceful coexistence of two completely different theories of life, theories of government, theories of how we manage our affairs. We can't be in this dire a conflict without something giving somewhere along the way. And so I know that there is a sizable and growing sentiment for people who believe that that is where we're headed, whether we want to or not. Whether we want to go there or not. I myself haven't made up my mind. So I still haven't given up the idea that we are the majority and that all we have to do is find a way to unite and win. And our problem is the fact that there are just so many rhinos, so many Republicans in the Washington establishment who'll do anything to maintain their membership in the establishment because of the perks and the opportunities that are presented for their kids and so forth.
All right, so that's Rush Limbaugh. I just wanted to note how I think it's fucking hilarious that Rush Limbaugh's like, I'm an anti-establishment Republican. No, you're not. You suckle at the teat of the establishment day in, day out. But look, ridiculous points by Limbaugh aside. Are we really that different? No. Okay. Are there differences? Yes. But generally, most Americans want to tax corporations. Okay. Don't want too much government power, but also want the government to solve regular problems, to help people in poverty, most Americans like programs like Social Security and Medicare. Americans want higher wages. So I don't know who you're talking on behalf of, Rush Limbaugh. Maybe it's your tiny fucking audience. Maybe it's the audience, that is mainly made up of like incredibly partisan boomers, right? And not to say all boomers are wrong or bad, right? Not all boomers, all right? But there are that's the majority of people who listen to him, though. His audience, like, you got to look at the demographics. They're definitely 65 or older, the majority of. And so that's why I'm saying that. But these people are a fringe minority that are radicalized on the right. They do not represent average Americans who actually, policy-wise, are pretty progressive, but understandably, they don't know it. Why? Why don't they know they're progressive? Why don't they identify with what's considered to be far left in this country? Why do they continue to call themselves like centrist or conservative or whatever? It's because the Overton window has been shifted, and words don't mean anything anymore. And so that's like a bigger, kind of like a meta issue, right? But when you go down, and I've seen consistent polls on this, and I've talked to quite a bit of people, quite a few people. I've seen, Bernie Sanders get a room full of Trump voters clap for Medicare for all. Understand that we actually, for policy-wise, have a lot in common. We all kind of want the same things. We want health care. We want higher wages. We want a good standard of living. And we're okay with taxing wealthy people in order to do so. Okay? And so understand that that's kind of what binds us as Americans, is some of those similar beliefs. And look, you could go, and this is why they call them wedge issues, by the way. Republicans are masters at using those wedge issues to divide Americans among one or two lines. And you've got people who are single issue voters. You've got people who are, uneducated voters, as far as when it comes to the issues, right? Again, and you have people that don't necessarily understand what, like, the Democratic Party or progressives, I should say, more of, actually stand for. And you've got people like Rush Limbaugh that have been pushing this ridiculously partisan framing for decades, that have been really pushing these divisions where none really exist. Okay? Just constant streams of just bullshit, social wedge issues. And so that's the real problem. Okay? That's the real problem. And so, yes, who helped make some of these divisions that he is now bemoaning? Rush Limbaugh. It's completely ironic when you look at it. But that said, Rush Limbaugh isn't the only one who's been talking about this secession, right? You also had a Texas state lawmaker saying that he was planning to propose a referendum for the state to secede from the United States. This is State Representative Kyle Biederman, who wrote, "The federal government is out of control and does not represent the values of Texans. That's why I'm committing to file legislation this session that will allow a referendum to give Texans a vote for the state of Texas to reassert his status as an independent nation." Good luck with that. I doubt it's going to pass. I'm just saying. And then you also had a story where there's a person in Michigan who's a Republican, okay? And he also, I think he just got in trouble. He got kicked off a committee as a result of saying that he would support, basically undermining the election results as well, and installing Donald Trump, or having them, supporting Texas in their lawsuit. So anyway, that said, this whole talk of secession is absolutely just ridiculous. And it's no surprise to see it from Republicans who are just really, really salty about losing an election legitimately. They did this with Obama as well. So, all right. Anyway, let's take a break. Actually, I'm gonna take a break here. We're gonna come back. We've got the story about the Trump administration coming after people who are disabled. We've got new eligibility restrictions that are about to be signed into effect. We've got the Paycheck Protection Program giving money to bigoted companies, and then that modeling story. So stay right here. Round the Nation will be right back.
It's like a Sharknado, except with poop.
I have not loved this conversation.
Wait, oh, you're getting nervous, man.
Oh, well, I'm sorry.
Welcome back to the show. Round the Nation right here, Waldorf Nation. Jeff Waldorf here with you. So let's read some super chat before I get into more stories. So Trevor Watson says, where I live in New Zealand, in America, the death toll every 15 days is more than the people in my town. It is really disastrous. Over 307,000 Americans are confirmed dead as a result of the pandemic. And what is the Trump administration doing about it? Nothing. What's Congress doing about it? Nothing. Not a goddamn thing. So that's, look, that's a problem. I will talk about that stimulus a little bit, at least in the result of the result of the CARES Act. It's frustrating. It's incredibly frustrating. All right, more. Star Trek says coronavirus death toll is now up to a September 11th attack per day. That's what he had said. So much for so-called pro-life Republicans. Yeah, it's a disaster. Absolute disaster. Zach Sherman says right-wing media has caused right-wingers to be stupid asses that have no empathies for others through their bigotry. As I've said before, Donald Trump in the extreme right encourage you to be the worst person the worst version of yourself, okay, and to be the worst person in the room. And you know, it is astounding the lack of empathy that some people absolutely have. But understand, like, we're kind of insulated from this, so we don't really notice this, I think, in my opinion. Like in the progressive bubble, we don't see that most Americans actually do tend to agree with us. And that the extreme right, as prominent as they are, as loud as they are, and as much power as they hold, they are a pretty small minority of people. I know. But Jeff, 70 million people voted for Donald Trump. I mean, yeah, they did. When it comes to, of course, media, when it comes to the government actually like helping people, during crises and actually coming in the problem with the establishment, I'm not surprised. I'm just not surprised that people were tired of that, and of course, there's racism, all that. I think a large chunk of Trump voters voted for Trump for reasons that are unrelated to policy. But yeah, we need better education. We need media. We need to not just educate people, but we need to I don't know, have empathy. I don't know if we can teach that, but we've got to foster that. All right. Anyway, it's a bigger discussion. All right. LL says, "Oh, the irony of Republicans believing that exercising their rights entails taking rights away from others." Yeah. And Trevor Watson adds, "It's sad in America." No, nailed it. It is absolutely sad. All right, so let's go and talk about policy here that is going to affect a lot of people, over 500,000 Americans. And so let's get into it. It's today's countdown to when Trump leaves office, finally. His administration is attacking, and his attacks on Social Security continue. In fact, the Social Security Administration late last week submitted a new rule to the Office of Management and Budget. So now this proposed rule would further tighten eligibility requirements for Social Security disability benefits. So now the administration's proposed rule would basically revise the criteria by which the SSA determines who does and does not qualify for disability. Under current law, applicants with certain serious conditions automatically qualify for benefits. Those with other ailments are deemed qualified or not based on an evaluation of additional factors such as age, work history, education, and, quote, residual functional capacity. So that system makes sense, right? So you're basically taking in the context of somebody. Like, okay, you have this wrong with you, but you're also, you're an older person. So, you've got back issues. You've had back issues for your entire life. I know it's like the common one that they go to is the back, but you've been working your ass off in the factory for 30 years. You're in your 50s. You're like, I can't do it. I can't work anymore. So they'll take that into consideration versus somebody who's 20 years old and complains of back pain and says, oh yeah, it hurts. Well, you can still work. You're 20 years old. So we'll deny you based on that claim. Okay. But the 50-year-old, they'd be more accepting of. That's how it works currently. Okay. So now that's it. The Trump administration's proposed rule would change all that. As the Wall Street Journal reported earlier this year, it would no longer assume age seriously affects a person's ability to adapt to what they call simple entry-level work. It would also raise the age at which education and work experience are considered in determining eligibility to 55 from 50. The new rule would also update data on occupational skills the agency uses to determine eligibility based on new information from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So my question is, how is age not a factor? They're saying that, no, we would like to no longer consider age as a major factor on whether you should get disability or not. So I think that should be a factor, though. And also, what would be considered entry-level work? I mean, a lot of entry-level work can be pretty demanding. And gone are the days where, there's a lot of secretarial work, for example. Okay. Take fast food workers. They're entry-level work. Okay. They are considered to be entry-level. It's not an easy environment. It is very fast-paced work. Cashiers are another one. People in America often stand for 8 hours a day. Now, I say America because in a lot of other countries, cashiers actually get chairs. Not in America, though. We say, no, you must stand for 8 hours. Damn it. Or else if you're not standing, you ain't working. I know because I've heard my bosses say that before. Okay? So understand that there is a lot of entry-level work that is actually physically demanding. If you're asking for people who are older and considered to be disabled, but not that disabled or that much to get benefits to stand for 8 hours a day or do that kind of fast food work, well, I mean, that's not good. Okay? And look, the reason that they're doing this is pretty simple. Republicans want to gut Social Security. They don't want people getting checks. Okay? They don't want people getting government checks. They hate it. And secondly, and this is also important, companies want to pay people less because they can get away with paying disabled people less for the same amount of work. So if these so-called entry-level jobs start filling up with people who are disabled, legally, companies are able to pay them less because, we have to make accommodations for them, right? Which I think is ridiculous. They should get paid the same as anyone else. That said, and that's why they're exploited often by employers. And the employers know this, and that's why they were like, yeah, we would rather hire disabled people to do these jobs, which they know they could do, and then pay them less over what we consider to be quote unquote able-bodied people. And so they get away with even more exploitation under this new rule. But there's more. Another component of the proposed overhaul, according to Huffington Post, would essentially redefine full-time work as 30 hours per week instead of the usual 40 for purposes of determining whether someone is disabled. So, as a result, fewer people would likely win benefits as a result. Okay. So now 40, again, is considered to be full-time to get benefits from the company, right? They're going to scale this back to 30 so that, you're not able to get benefits, basically, to determine, like, if you can work 30 hours a week, then, well, you're obviously not disabled. So you're not going to get benefits. But if you're someone who's disabled and cannot work a 40-hour work week because of your disability, then you're not going to get benefits there. So that basically leaves everyone who is in that predicament without any sort of benefits, whether it be healthcare through Medicare, which is what disabled people get often, in addition to Medicaid if they're low income, and you can't, you can't get benefits from your work like healthcare, and so you're basically stuck in the middle, and you don't have anything that can help you, because people who do have disability often require medical care, like, for example, medication, in order to manage said disability. And so it leaves a lot of people in the middle that are really hurting, that are going to continue hurting, and not being able to get the benefits they need and that they deserve, frankly. And so now Richard Fiesta, fun name, by the way, executive director of the Alliance for Retired Americans, warned that the Trump administration's rule, one of many attacks it has launched on Social Security during its 4 years in power, would oppose a massive change that would push thousands of Americans into poverty. Quote, Social Security's disability payments are modest, an average of about $15,096 a year for the average worker. Again, that is not a lot of money. That is a very low amount of money. And it said that these benefits are not easy to receive. Disabled workers go through a lengthy and rigorous process to determine eligibility, which is entirely true. Again, I know people that have gone personally through this process. There are a lot of denials, oftentimes years. It takes years sometimes to get benefits if you're even able to get through that process, because there are so many denials and there are so many requirements in order to meet. It is not like, oh, my pinky toe hurts, even though I gesture towards my back. it hurts. Oh, I'm going to get disability and then sit fat on my ass. That's not what happens. That's not what happens at all. But that is, unfortunately, is what Republicans tend to push as when you think of people that go on disability, which is not the truth at all. But the reason that they push that narrative is so that they can cut Social Security, and so they can take that money for themselves to fund their own projects, to give to their donors, in reduced taxes and things like that, and also allow companies to be able to exploit disabled workers who will work, at a lower pay rate, basically. And so now, one more here. Is going to continue the quote here. We are in a pandemic that is hitting older Americans the hardest. Our government should be helping Americans who can no longer work due to a disability, not scheming to deny them benefits they have earned over a lifetime of hard work. Indeed. Now, here's the other thing, right? Even when the majority of Americans get vaccinated, and I hope a majority do, and the pandemic ends, right? So that's not going to be for a while. That might not even be until the middle of next year or even the summer, okay? Even if all that happens at that time, which we don't know, but if it does, we're still going to be in a recession. Things aren't just going to magically go back to the way they were prior to coronavirus, okay? So the effects of the shutdown and the lack of help from the government, this is really important. We got a one-time $1,200 stimulus check. And not even all Americans were able to get it. And then there were $600 unemployment benefits. That's it. As far as the government is concerned, when it came to helping people during a pandemic, the United States government chose to help corporations far more than it helped regular people. And as a result, we are going to be dealing with a recession for a very long time. And yet, at the same time, they're telling people who are disabled to go get jobs that may or may not exist and would normally perhaps go to younger people or other people in the market, which they can allow, which these companies will then pay those disabled people a lot less. And so in a way, it allows these corporations to exploit these people in order to save a few bucks. It is sick. And Republicans know exactly what they're doing when they propose these. They don't care about the disabled. They don't care about the poor. They certainly don't care about the elderly. Okay. All they care about, and you can see through their actions, this being one of them, they only give a shit about the rich, corporations, and their own donors. Okay. Anyway, moving on. I'm gonna have to pick it up. It appears that millions of dollars in taxpayer funding in the federal coronavirus payroll protection program ended up in the hands of anti-gay businesses, schools, and organizations. Now, this is according to an analysis of the payments by NBC News. And so this is horrible. Now, the funds examined by NBC were paid to groups and businesses with either a history of anti-LGBTQ advocacy or policies that explicitly discriminate against the community. So this isn't like, oh, we had an outdated policy and, that happened to have led to discrimination in one or two cases. No, these are people that actively, or companies, I should say, that actively went out and antagonized a group of people. That's horrible. Horrible. All right, so now NBC News had listed 17 of the entities in its investigation. 7 of them, the American College of Pediatricians, American Family Association, Center for Family and Human Rights, that's ironic, Church Militant / St. Michael's Media, St. Michelle's Media, Liberty Counsel, Pacific Justice Institute, and the Ruth Institute have been listed as anti-LGBTQ hate groups by the Southern Poverty Law Center. So, all right. notice how there's a lot of them that have the word family in them. Okay. Look, that's how you can tell that they're a hate group. Not because like family's bad. It's because the word has been co-opted by right wingers, by extreme right wingers that are, homophobic, transphobic, et cetera, et cetera. And really the only family they look out for are white families. So back to the money here, right? So now those 7 companies themselves were paid a total of $2.5 million in federal public taxpayer money, according to records. One of them, the American Family Association, which, hosts like Brian Fisher. I haven't done a Brian Fisher segment in like 3 years. Because it turns out the insane stuff that he said before that was like, oh, that's crazy. Now that's like Republican mainline talking points against people that are LGBTQ+. Okay. So now that organization was given $1.4 million in Paycheck Protection Program funding that they will now use to fight the quote unquote homosexual agenda. Oh, lovely. Another conservative, the conservative legal organization Liberty Counsel took $428,000 in COVID-19 aid and advocates for anti-LGBT discrimination under the guise of religious liberty, according to the Southern Poverty Law Center. The organization made headlines last year working to remove protections from gay people from an anti-lynching bill. So, we don't want people to get lynched unless, it's just gay people. Then we're totally okay with that. That's horrible. That's absolutely horrible. All right, more. Among other anti-gay organizations taking taxpayer money is the Emmanuel Christian School in Northern Virginia, where it just so happens that Karen Pence, the wife of Mike Pence, I have to do it.
Mike Pounds.
Okay. That received $724,900 in aid from the federal government. The school prohibits employees, by the way, from engaging in or condoning homosexual or lesbian sexual activity and transgender identity, NBC reported last year. School warns in its parental agreement that it may refuse admission or discontinue enrollment of a student whose household condones sexual immorality, such as homosexual activity or bisexual activity. Catholic Social Services is another one, was given $2 million in Paycheck Protection Program aid, and they will be going before the Supreme Court over their policy over not considering same-sex couples as foster parents. Lovely. Imagine being one of those children in foster care that needs a home, right? And not being able to go to a loving home because there's 2 moms or 2 dads. I mean, that's horrible. This group should not be getting public money in order to assist in their discrimination. None of these groups should. No one. And see, that gets to the root of the PPP program itself. Okay. There's no oversight. None. Which is why so much of the money went to wealthy corporations and scammers who spent millions on things like luxury cars and homes. I understand that was the whole purpose. They said, well, Republicans, Mnuchin fought to have no oversight, to have limited oversight, which is weird because Republicans always say that they're fiscally responsible. But when it comes to coronavirus aid, they're like, no, we don't want any oversight so that they can hand out this money like candy. And unfortunately, that's exactly what happened. Now, larger companies, including dozens of national chains, actually received the maximum amount allowed under the program of about $10 million, which they did not need. The Post reported only 28% of the money was doled out in amounts of less than $150,000. So not a lot going to small businesses. The data also shows this program primarily benefited the well-banked and well-lawyered at the expense of small businesses, of the small businesses it was supposed to benefit. This is according to Liz Hempowitz, Director of Public Policy for the Project on Government Oversight. Yeah. And again, This is not what we were sold. Okay. Those who voted for this in order to help small businesses. And of course, because of the urgency of the CARES Act, which was immediately passed through Congress. But again, shockingly, after it was passed, now we find out that most of that help went to corporations. Because they always do, right? They always get the help. Now, that's corruption. Okay, this is the corruption that's in the system. So now, there are some people on the left that are very, very angry at the politicians that voted for this. Even politicians that are on our side. And I can understand that. But let me say this. I don't blame Bernie Sanders, who voted for this, or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. In the same bill that is full of this corporate welfare, you had stimulus checks that are desperately needed right now. People need this money. They are losing their homes. They are losing their homes. They're not able to pay their utility bills. They are going hungry. There is massive demand at food banks. There are big problems going on. Okay, and then there were $600 unemployment checks, which is the same thing. They were and are needed desperately by the American people. Okay, and they're needed again. Understand, though, that in this country, in America, the corruption is so deep that in order to help the American people just a little bit, you have to pass through a bill that is stuffed full of corporate welfare. That's the problem with the system. And if you don't give the corporations their due, what they want, the people will be left with nothing. And this is not something that one or two politicians can fix. Understand that this can only be fixed, I think, by the people holding the entire government accountable. The corruption is in the system. It's in the system, which is why you have to replace the system, not just the people in it. Because you keep replacing the people, the system doesn't get fixed. That said, I'm not saying that there isn't a role for electoral politics. There's a big role here. And in order to make real changes in the system, we need 100 Bernie Sanders. And so let's get on that. Primaries. But also you have to have outside pressure. That outside pressure could take the form of a general strike. Something that can force that pressure onto the system itself and help tear it down. Because if we don't, well, we can look forward to more stimulus that doesn't actually go to the American people, but just goes to more corporate welfare. All right. One more story here for you guys. The New York Post is getting some heat for shaming a paramedic for working a second job. So now you might be wondering, well, that doesn't make sense. Well, for me, the entire story doesn't make sense, but let me give you some of the details. So now an article in the Post outed and attempted to shame a woman for, who's a paramedic, for getting a second job doing nude modeling. So this is somebody that's opened up an OnlyFans. So now this is written by Dean Balsamini, and Susan Edelman. And this post detailed how a woman named Lauren Kwai, who has since spoken out publicly using her name, so I'm okay with that. But originally, she wanted to be anonymous. Well, she had her anonymity taken away by these terrible human beings that wrote this article. Okay, so now Kwai works for a private ambulance company that serves New York hospitals in the city's 911 system. She she's an emergency medical technician. She went through that EMT program back in 2018, but after she graduated, she realized that she needed to make more money. She was only making $15 an hour. Now in New York, it takes about $18 to even have a living wage, according to researchers at MIT. So, one of the things that she tried to do actually is to complete more training. So she did. She became a paramedic last year at a school that charges about $13,200 in tuition. So now she's got, of course, student loans to pay off, but at least now makes $25 an hour. That's better, but still, that's still a lot of debt, and you're not exactly living comfortably, especially in New York. So now she wanted to work a second job. And part of her reasoning is she didn't want to get burnt out as a paramedic, which is completely understandable. So now the article noted that to avoid working more than 40 hours a week at a job with a very high burnout rate, she began an OnlyFans account where she posts nude videos and photos. I fail to see the problem. I mean, at all with what she's doing. I think for one, EMTs should make a lot more money. In fact, here's the data on that. In the US, paramedics' average yearly salaries range from $33,000 a year, that's about a little over 15 bucks, to $46,000 a year, according to ZipRecruiter. So now when you compare it to, for example, our nearest neighbor, Canada, they actually pay their paramedics far more. They earn an average of about $57,000 per year. So that's quite a bit more. And of course, they have a public healthcare system, which we have a private healthcare system. But anyway, the big problem with the story is that she was doxxed, plain and simple, by the writers of this article. Okay, Kwai wrote on Sunday that Balsamini went against her wishes by refusing to allow her to be anonymous in the article. And of course, there were very legitimate reasons that she wanted to remain anonymous. She said, "I told him my safety and job were going to be at risk if he posted the article. He truly did not care. He went on to call my employer and my mother." What? Okay, why would you do such things? What in the hell is wrong with you? You're saying, no, I don't want you to be anonymous, even though you asked, even though I asked you professionally to please, professional courtesy, let me be anonymous in this article. He says, no, I'm gonna name you, I'm gonna shame you. Gross. To make it worse too, and this really shows what they were doing. Balsamini and Edelman included a quote from another paramedic, an anonymous quote, saying that, quote, "Other EMTs and paramedics make more money by pulling extra shifts instead of pulling off their clothes." Fuck off. These writers are trash. New York Post, get rid of your garbage. Take out your trash. Okay? These people are gross, disgusting people. You're going to dox this woman because you wanted to shame her because she decided to take ownership of her own body and use that to make money on OnlyFans. You're a sick person. You two are sick. Gross people. Fired. You should be fired. But let me get the other thing straight, okay? Sex work is work. Okay, if she wants to do an OnlyFans to make extra cash, that's not a bad thing. I think that's a fine thing. As long as you want to do it, that should be up to you. That's your body that you're selling. And by the way, I love the argument. Like, oh, you shouldn't be selling your body for cash. Dude, that's capitalism. That's all you do is sell your body for money. Sell your body, your time, your even your brain. You are selling yourself for cash. So why is that any different than sex work? The puritanical bullshit in this country is just insane. But look, again, the pure vindictiveness. Imagine the kind of piece of shit that you have to be to publicly shame somebody for doing an activity that, by the way, is in massive demand. What? People consume adult entertainment all the time. So I don't understand the fact that millions of people consume this, millions of hours of video per year. Hell, probably a week for some people. Look, why are the people who provide this service not being treated like they're people? I mean, they are professionals whose work is valid and do bring joy to millions of people. Why are they not treated as people? They should be. They should be. Why are we so stupidly puritanical in this country? The fact that she needed to ask for anonymity at all because of the possibility of losing her livelihood is proof of how badly as we as a society treat the sex workers that we hypocritically enjoy when nobody's looking. It's complete hypocrisy. Complete hypocrisy. It is absolutely fucking gross how we treat people because of what they do, because of their job. And I mean, you can see this with careers everywhere. I mean, here in America, we mistreat people who are doing fast food, essential service, right? We mistreat people who are janitors, who are sanitation workers. And we definitely, and I think these people get the worst of it, mistreat sex workers. All of that is legitimate work that is in demand, and people, it is, I think it is necessary. I think it is. It is all work. And so it's really gross. Now, in response to the story, this person did get a lot of support. Okay. One person, Dr. Brooke Magnanti, says, like I said, every frontline worker I know in America is a side gig of some kind. People barely get above minimum to answer your 911 calls. Don't like it? Pay them what they're worth. I agree with that. Sure. Mark D. Levine says, it's a scandal that we pay paramedics so little they need second jobs, but then adds, sex work is work. I'm not going to link the New York Post article because it's garbage. Absolutely. Alex Edelman adds, there's absolutely nothing wrong with this except the fact that she isn't paid more for being a medic. I can definitely agree with that. And the ACLU adds this. We'll keep saying this. Sex work is work. Yep. Look, nobody should be shamed for getting into this, okay? And I understand that there is exploitation in the sex industry. That is a legitimate problem. And I want to protect sex workers. That is something that's, important to it should be important to everybody, okay? Protecting, as somebody who is an advocate of labor of all different types, sex workers need to be represented as well. And they need protection, okay? They require protection. Not only that, but, okay, in order to do so, we need to not stigmatize. We need to destigmatize sex work, okay? Legalize it, regulate it, protect the workers. That is something that needs to be done. And I think that's the main thing, though. First is to destigmatize this work. And we can move on further to protect sex workers. And understand that there's a lot of people that are thinking like that there's different ways to get to this end goal. And we can discuss those ways that protect people the most. And so we need to, like I said, work on protecting these workers. But before we get to a bigger discussion of that, which I'll leave for another show, one more person jumped in. And that was Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Here's what she said. Leave her alone. The actual scandalous headline is that medics in the United States need two jobs to survive. No, I can't disagree with that one. But as I said before, that these people who wrote this article are complete dirtbags, shitbags, and deserve to be fired for doxing and outing somebody for doing something that is 100% legitimate. All right. That's it. That's all we got today. Thank you for going around the nation with me today. Please like and share the stream if you haven't already. Thank you for the super chats, the donations. You can become a patron by going to patreon.com/JeffWalder. You can become a channel member by hitting the join button below. Check out our merch. We got some new shirts, things like that. Good stuff. Thank you all. Love you. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation. We'll see you all later.
have not loved this conversation.
Amazing.
Silence.
There's some whores in this house.